One of the most brutal covers I've ever
It
seen.
kind of felt a little repetitive.
I am so far behind my reading goals for this year.
Love you, Papa. I love you.
Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today is Saturday, and I have today and tomorrow off of work for the first time in months. So I'm going to be taking full advantage of that and essentially just being at my most leisure. Prepare yourselves for that. But I wanted to challenge myself to another 24-hour readathon video. I am so far behind my reading goals for this year. I work a very seasonal job, which is basically all consuming from the end of winter and most of spring. So I'm at the tail end of that right now. The last I looked, I was about 21 books behind where I needed to be in order to match the pacing to accomplish my reading goals by the end of the year. So that is, a significant amount, but I believe I will be able to catch up on that. I have a ton of books around me. I have some used books that I've recently purchased. I have some book of the month books from last year that I could potentially read in here. And I also have some library books that are on their final renewal cycle, so I'd like to get to those. The genres vary. We have some nonfiction in here, some classics, some fantasy, young adult. There's a combination of things. I honestly don't know what all I'm going to be in the mood to read, but I did pre-select my first book for today, so I will go ahead and share that with you. And for the build-up, it is a book that I've been anticipating, I'd say, for about a year and a half at this point in time. The first book that I read from this author was last year, and an immediate 5-star read for me. That book was We Have Always Lived in the Castle. This author is also popularly known for The Haunting of Hill House. The first book I'm going to be reading is none other than Hangsman by our beloved Shirley Jackson. And I will point out this is probably like one of the most brutal covers I've ever seen. So definitely a choice. It also kind of reminds me a bit of that TV show Angela Anaconda, for anyone who may know what I'm talking about. There's this like gray subdued skin tone and like more boxy cartoonish appearance in the outfit. You know what I'm talking about? I'm going to be starting off with a nice little thriller. I think since it's been so long since I've been able to like read a bunch, I'm in the mood for something a little lighter. So like thrillers, romance, I think would be fun. I do have some nonfiction in here as well, but that would be actually be kind of wild to have only a nonfiction 24-hour readathon. Anyways, yes, I'm going to be starting off with this nice little thriller, and it does seem like there's a possibility it can scare the crap out of me. It is loosely based on the real life disappearance of Bennington College sophomore in 1946. But the premise of this is that there's a 17-year-old girl named Natalie, and she has kind of a contentious relationship with her parents. She's looking for her own sense of freedom. So she goes off to college, and through that, she potentially be friends, but becomes obsessed with the married professor, and things go awry. Let's get into it. It is currently 11:59, so we're just going to start reading at noon and read from noon today until noon tomorrow, and I'll give you some updates along the way. Okay. It is 3:33 right now, and I wish I could be telling you that I finished my first book for this readathon, but instead I am telling you that I took a nap, and thankfully so, because I definitely was reading a little bit slower than I would typically. So I'm happy at least that's, I guess, taking care of itself. Anyways, I felt like I could give you a book update. I am currently on page 94 in Hangsamen, and it's kind of like about the halfway point. I'm not sure if you can see that well or not, but I'm nearly halfway through the book. I am very much enjoying the writing. I was expecting to. I do very much like Shirley Jackson. The more I read her, the more I start drawing parallels to Sylvia Plath. And I think a large part of it is because they're both usually kind of within the same era. Like I kind of just I'm going to say like 50s to 60s, talking about their lives, and there's a lot of commonalities that they share between them. But through writing, I feel like they say these things with this sophistication that there's just way more substance than I feel like my diary or journals would have had when I was 17. From what I've read so far, I can kind of split it up into two different sections of the book. The first part of the book, we are learning a little bit more about family dynamics and how the father's definitely kind of like the ringleader at home, and how he's a writer and he likes to host these parties at his house and kind of like fancy other women. He does have, I think, a strong connection with his daughter, who's our main character. In the background of all of that happening with the father, we are learning about the mom and how while she's preparing for the company to come, she's like baking casseroles and preparing all these different types of food for this unknown amount of people who are supposed to show up every Sunday. And she's just stressing out about all of it. Unfortunately, the father and the children both don't really seem to care much of the mother. They kind of both, I think, or they all dehumanize her in a way. I guess I will also include that at the very end of that section where we're talking about the company coming over, there is a scene that can lead you to assume something quite terrible happens and potentially look up trigger warnings for that. Moving into the second part of what I've read, we're talking about Natalie's experience in college and her transitioning from her life at home to now living in a dorm with all these other women, her observations of these other women, her being woken up to do this like initiation sort of thing, and just kind of the differentness that she has of like not really wanting to partake in goofy things, and then also, you know, her insecurities that come into play and like what she thinks other people perceive of her. So I basically just got to the point where she's having conversations and martinis with the professor she's going to develop an obsession with. So I feel like the story is about to turn. Okay. I just finally finished Hangsman, and it was definitely not what I was expecting it to be. I very much enjoyed the first half of the book, but the second half I did not exactly care for. I feel like my expectations were a miss for sure, and the perpetrator was not who I was expecting the perpetrator to be. There was a lot more detail that I felt got put into the end, which provided some buildup in some senses, but I really wanted to move through this book a lot faster than I did. It's possible that I just disliked the second half because I had just woken up. Yeah, just totally something different than what I was expecting. I am en route to go pick up some potatoes for my dog's dinner, and I think I'm gonna pick up like a frozen pizza to bake as well. Possibly like a coconut water. Maybe I'm dehydrated. I don't know. I can tell you one of my favorite jokes that my partner's sister told me, and that joke is, it's like my favorite joke ever. Anyways, I'm gonna go pick up that food and I'll see you soon. All right, I have eaten. I feel stronger. I have more clarity. It is time to get back into reading. And I have not totally decided on what's the direction I'm going to take. I have a few different contenders. The pace I'm going, I'm honestly, if I can read 4 books for this readathon, that's that's what I want to do. That's my goal. Okay, I've decided. The next book I'm going to read is just finishing off the one that I had started previous to this video, and that is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. I'm not very far along. I'm like 60 pages in. It's one of the library books that I have due back next week sometime. So I figured may as well just finish this. I do like it. I love Ali Hazelwood. I haven't read very many of her books, but from what I've read and everything that I've heard about her, she is just really cool. It's fun to have characters that are in STEM in these romance books. I think it's more entertaining. And honestly, is a little motivating to me too. I adore that. In Not in Love, man, I didn't even read the back of this. Basically, what I've read so far is that the main character, Rue, has not had an enjoyable time with her dating and relationships and frequents the apps. Through one of her experiences, she met somebody who may or may not be somebody she has to work with. Let's get into it. So we just came back from a little night drive and I'm going to get back into reading. It just feels so good outside and it smells really nice too because there's a ton of passion flower that's in bloom. It's intoxicating. Hello. It is afternoon now, and I probably like an hour or an hour and a half ago, I finished my second book for this readathon, which was Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. And as you probably could have guessed, I really loved it. I think her writing is just so good, and basically if you read one of her books, you can kind of expect what the others will be like. I'm for that. I will continue on reading her writing for as long as I live. In Not in Love, I guess you can consider it to be like an enemies to lovers sort of trope, but there's background of food science that's going on, a little bit of hockey's thrown in there, lawsuits are occurring, and there's definitely some tension that's building up. There's lots of spice as well. I think that's something that has been mentioned a few times. I've listened to a few reviews of this book earlier, and that's something that stuck out to me. I probably agree. There were a lot of spice scenes, probably the most spice that I've ever read. And I did enjoy most of it. I think just towards the end, it kind of felt a little repetitive, and maybe there were like two scenes where, since I read so much of their spicier moments earlier on in detail, I kind of just felt confident enough to move through the other scenes a little bit faster. Great book. I was looking at the books that my library offers of hers, and they only have 4 that are listed, which shockingly, they don't even have The Love Hypothesis listed, but I did just enter a giveaway to potentially win a print copy. I mean, I technically, my 24-hour period has ended and I've just finished those 2 books, but I do want to continue reading. And I figured why not? I mean, I'm the one making up the rules here. So there are 2 books next to me that I think I'll be able to sneak into today. First being Sylvia Plath's Ariel. This is the restored edition, so it's her poetry in order of how she initially wanted it to be published, as opposed to how it first was by her husband. The other book that I would like to get to today is called Dragon Fruit by Micaiah Lucier. This is a young adult fantasy book about pirates and dragons, and I think I can move through it quickly, but I definitely wanted to read this in warmer weather, so my turtleneck may be deceiving, but it is June. Just the air conditioning is not my friend when I work outside. You become accustomed to the outdoor heat. So I actually kind of flew through Ariel. I was not expecting to do so. I read to page 90, and then parts 2 and 3 of this book are the facsimiles, and those aren't pages I'm trying to read at this moment in time. I did read all through all the poems that she has listed here, and I obviously will need to go back and spend more time on them and just kind of look at them individually on their own, do my own interpretation of them. I think sometimes with authors as popular as Sylvia Plath, even looking into Reddit is kind of fun to see what others' analysis are. What was kind of cool was that the foreword of the book is written by Plath's daughter, and she does disclose that her father cheated on her mother and, she caught wind of it. So a lot of these poems are angry and dark and just what was led to believe Plath seeking vengeance on her husband or ex-husband. It does make sense that the father removed some of the poems that were probably about him. On top of that, I think he was also removing some of the poetry that had bad or poor representation of other members of his family. So he was kind of doing it, to protect himself, but to protect other people. And the daughter is playing a neutral card. So I can appreciate that. I'd say of all of the poems in this collection, my favorite by far is called Letter in November. It's on page 69, and it reads, Love the world, suddenly turns color. The streetlight splits through the rat's tail, pods of the laburnum at 9 in the morning. It's pretty nice. I think I like this poem just because it is a little bit lighter than others. A lot of the language, like in each stanza, is something I feel like I could relate to in some senses, or like I had probably the most connection to of all. Okay, it is 1:20 and I'm probably going to make some lunch. I think I should do that. I'm laying down now, clearly, but I am here to give you my last update for today. We have completed 24-hour plus day of reading. The book we finished is Dragon Fruit, and this was such a cute read. I can see this being a Pixar movie easily. We are following our main character, Hannah Lee, and her adventures like in the water and her relationship and connection to sea dragons. Majority of the story, you are on trek with her, trying to save slash capture the sea dragon's eggs, which are 3 foot tall dragon fruits. And legend has it that if you capture a dragon fruit, you are able to make like a wish of some sort that will expel you from past sorrow. So, with that, things do play out at a price. A lot of the story we're learning of people's greed and other people who are trying to also capture these dragon fruits. There are some little background animals that I happen to like the fruit bat and banana spider. Super great book, quick read. I would recommend if you're looking for like a little summer adventure. This is a good book to do that with. But it is now, I think it's like about 7 o'clock, and I'm going to move my body, I think, a bit more around today. I feel like I've been pretty dormant, so I need to have some action movements. And I'm also probably going to call my mom. So I will see everyone in the next video, and I hope you have a great night. Thanks for watching.